Welcome, everyone, to Mara Hedges, and I have the pleasure of serving on two boards. I'm on the Oswit Land Trust Board, and I'm also on the board of Greater Palm Springs Animal Allies, which runs the shelter, the animal shelter. You might know us as Friends of the Palm Springs Animal Shelter. This is really high. And I feel like my neck up. And I can take it out, right? That's better. Okay, and I'm loud anyway, so I feel super loud right now. And also the Desert Wildlife Center. How many of you know about the Desert Wildlife Center? I'm trusting that those that are wearing the shirts do, for sure. And that's a good segue to visit the booths in the back. I'm calling them booths, they're tables. And we have, of course, Poison-Free Malibu there, and Desert Wildlife Center, and Oswit Land Trust, with all sorts of goodies back there to educate, and also cool swag. So excited. How many people, raise your hand if you care about wildlife? I'm just trying to get you a little workout, right? Of course you do. And oftentimes people don't understand or realize the impact of what we do in our daily lives, whether it be in our homes, our workplaces, our schools, our city parks, what we do that actually harms wildlife. And as we embarked on this adventure of opening the Desert Wildlife Center, which should open, by the way, in just the next couple of months, it's very exciting, we realized, my colleague Linda Talley and I, how many species are impacted by human activity and very negative way. Of course, there's climate change and there's development, but then there's things that we do in our own yards, in our own lives, that really have an impact on wildlife. And that's why we reached out to the good folks over at Poison-Free Malibu to learn more from them. And we understood rodenticides were a big deal. And my colleague Linda Talley will talk a little bit about that outreach, and then we will introduce our speakers.
Yes, we are very excited to have Keon and Joel here from Poison-Free Malibu to talk about how we can become poison-free here in Palm Springs and in the Coachella Valley. They are the pioneers. They have led the way since, I think, 2012. They started out, and they have had a lot of followers come along with them. And I'm hoping that we will come along with them too and become poison-free. So with that, we'll turn it over.
And I do want to point out, Dan Rossi, could you just run up here real quick so people can see your face? We would not be doing the Desert Wildlife Center if it wasn't for Linda and her husband. So Ron Norris, who's here somewhere. Ron, raise your hand. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Linda, for your generous support. And then Dan Rossi, who runs our shelter and all of our enterprises. He has a lot of experience from Pittsburgh, where he ran an animal shelter and a wildlife rehab center for many, many years. So thank you, Dan, for all you do. Okay, so yeah. So Director Keon Schulman is a registered nurse with a master's in nursing administration. So nothing to do with wildlife, although humans can be pretty wild, right? And then Joel Schumann is a physicist in the aerospace industry. The two of you together are kind of the dream team. You've got all bases covered. They started their activism in Malibu with the city passing a resolution opposing anticoagulant rodent poison use in July of 2013. They subsequently have worked with 11 other Southern California cities for similar resolutions, and we're hoping that Palm Springs will be one of them. I know I see at least one person from the city on a commission. I'm not going to point you out, but I can see you. And hopefully others from the city will be interested in this topic and speak with us and learn from Keon and Joel. So welcome and thank you. That's good. Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm Keon Schulman and Joel Schulman of Poison-Free Malibu.
And today we will speak about earth-friendly management with an emphasis on rodent poisons. And here we are. We are a nonprofit organization whose goal is to educate the citizens, businesses, and government about the problems with poisons and to stop using them that affect our wildlife, pets, children, and the entire ecosystem. The key, as we have learned, is to establish new policies, regulations at the city, county, and state levels promoting poison-free solutions. We started in 2012 when a young mountain lion was found dead in our local park with rat poisons. This was the beginning of the mystery to be solved as to how our top predator mountain lions were being poisoned by rat poison. We will share with you what we have learned in the past 13 years so this preventable tragedy does not happen in your backyard. And what a wonderful backyard you do have, surrounded by wilderness, Oswit Canyon, open space filled with wildlife. We have spent many years exploring your glorious desertscape, or shall I say, escape. Please protect and preserve. We would like to give you a brief summary of 10 reasons to say no to chemical pesticides. And Joel will start it off.
Thank you. So there are 10 reasons not to use pesticides. And number one is pretty important. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes on it, which is very simply that they're not really the solution. Pesticides do not resolve the issue. And we'll give you the example of rat poison in commercial areas. This is what you see, the center picture. Go behind your shopping centers, go behind your supermarkets, your restaurants, movie theaters. And this is what you overwhelmingly see. An open dumpster with probably food on the ground, depending on the day of the week, feeding and breeding the rodents. The reasons there are rodents is because of this. And the solution is on the right. Have a dumpster that actually closes. And even when you close the lids, sometimes the lids are broken and don't really close. Take a look at that. And in Malibu and many other places, you actually should block them. Both because there's unauthorized people going, dumpster diving, and people actually use the dumpsters to get rid of stuff, which overstuffs them. So in Malibu, most cities actually have some kind of ordinance saying you can't make a mess. It's vague. So what we did in Malibu a couple of years ago is we said you really need a very clear ordinance that the dumpsters must be tightly closable and locked and nothing on the ground, and it must be enforced. City ordinances are only enforced if there's people to make it happen. So we did that, and that is the solution. We have a three-pronged approach to problems called repel, exclude, deter, or RED. Repel, exclude, deter. Here is the first of the strategies: repel. Come up with methods of keeping the rodents, the rats and mice away. It turns out some very pleasant plants that we like are extremely disliked by rats and mice. Mint, lavender, rosemary, etc. You can plant them in areas like around your house to keep out rodents. There are products you can buy which have a lot of the same ingredients, but are distilled. Organic products are available, including these kinds of ingredients. There's motion detecting water sprays, which turn on when they see an animal and make it and spray it, which they don't like. There's strobe lights. Mice and rats do not like that kind of lighting. And there's professional level repellents that you may want to have an expert apply. Propel, the third one down, that's being used in several homeowners associations in our area. You sort of spray it along the foundation of a building, and it keeps out rodents. And there's websites. This Nixolite website we found has a nice selection of products. There's organic repellents to keep rats off trees. You can coat the tree. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. There's electrified mats, which are totally harmless, even to our pets, but they have just enough electricity power to keep off mice and rats. And they're really good. You can put them across an entryway of like a restaurant, a doorway that you may want to keep open, but this mat will keep out the rats and mice. And it's good for automobiles, as I'll mention in a minute. Okay, that's repel. Now exclude. Exclude is the key for homeowners. If you have rats in your attic or your basement or behind your refrigerator, you're wasting your time with poisons. I mean, that you just keep killing them forever, but you're not solving the problem. You must find out how they're getting in and seal the hole. I have done this in my creaky house. I've done this several times as it moves around seasonally, and it's an interesting challenge. But and you could do it yourself, and you sort of learn how they think eventually, or you can hire someone. There are companies that have a lot of experience. Also, exclude them from trash cans or dumpsters in your own yard. Barbecues are popular with rats. Make sure they're clean and not accessible. Garage doors have a tendency to have openings, but you could seal it with. You could buy door sweeps that close that off. Rats can burrow. They can go down a bit. You may want to put an underground trench around certain vulnerable parts of your house filled with pea gravel that they can't get through. Then there's baffles that stop rodents from growing up trees. Okay, that's more about exclude. Here's some products that I've used several of these. Sometimes I go to the hardware, I take a picture of like a crack and and stucco or whatever, some kind of possible hole in my house. I'll take the photo, show it to the hardware store guy, and he'll say, "Oh, use this sealant or this mesh or this this kind of fabric, and that'll do it." And especially a vulnerable place, you can see the hole. What happens is, plumbers come around, or you're putting a cable in, or some kind of new electrical connection into your house, and they don't really seal it up after they drill your hole. So that's a prime entryway. Here's a sort of summary of things that can happen around your house. It's a really good chart. Maybe I can give it to somebody to spread around. But I'll just point out a couple of them that happened to me. You can see at the top there, firewood. I had some rats roaming around. I didn't know why. And I kicked the firewood pile, and I found out why. And the second thing definitely was on the right there, compost. I mean, we are very diligent composters. You either get a compost bin that really is sealed up, but I didn't, and they were definitely getting in and out there. So I put some extra fine mesh over some of the holes that they were doing it. That's just examples. There's lots of examples in this chart. Okay, that's repel, exclude. Now deter. The best way to do that is with the natural enemies of the rats and mice, which is the predators that eat them, the very predators that are poisoned. So the poison gets rid of the predators that are the solution. That's why a really good reason not to use poisons. So you got coyotes. If you got dogs, I know there's a problem there. You got to make sure that they're separated. Dogs and cats will eat the mice and rats. We got fox coming across our street, I think, every night. I mean, we don't have anything. But I'm pretty sure it's because of this fox. And bobcats, of course, these are all really good things in the environment. Owls and hawks I'll feature in a minute. They are the best. Owls and hawks are the best. Consider owl boxes and raptor poles. Owls eat typically on the order of 1,000 rodents a year. Make sure there's no pet food around. Pet feces, fallen fruit, clean it up. Like I said, woodpile, debris, ivy. I wanted to go into about these owls and hawk things. Okay, Ventura County, it has this river going through it. It gets flooded. It can get floods. It can do a lot of damage. They have levees and dams. They must be maintained. And squirrels were burrowing into the dirt, the old dirt variety of levees and dams, giving them a limited lifetime. So they had tons of rat poison along these levees and dams. And this is huge. And of course, that didn't really solve the problem, number one. And number two, really hurt the wildlife. So one of the heroes over there in the county said, let's try raptor poles. So they took away all the poison from 6,000 feet of the levee, and they put raptor poles for the hawks, and owl boxes too, I believe. After 2 years, they found out that there were 66% fewer squirrel burrows in the levees with the raptor poles as compared to the levees, which they still had, with poisons. I mean, way better. Okay, so they wiped out all their poisons. This is it. Now, this is also really good for open spaces. Baseball, school fields, baseball fields, parks, open parks, homeowners associations with open areas. Any kind of open area. If you got trees, you don't need this. But open areas, it's really great to put these Raptor perch is in the lower right. It's just a T-bar. It's just a big pole with a T on it that the raptor can sit on. And then we're just talking with Linda about home boxes. Cars, you have car problems up here? We got them like crazy. In the Santa Monica Mountains. Rats eat the wires. They cause thousands of dollars of damage. Car dealers are going, that sell hundreds of cars in their lots. It's actually like a really easy problem to solve, but you've got to notice it. The hard part is checking your car. If you have a car that you don't use stuck somewhere, you better check it often. You can just leave the hood up. Make sure there's no food there. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. The dealer I go to, Toyota dealer I go to, has hundreds of. He definitely does not. They don't want rats in their cars. This sixth thing down. They sell a product with strobe lights and ultrasound that they'll install under your hood for a couple $100. And this is what they do in their own cars. So that's a nice automatic thing. I personally, if I see something under the car, or if I check and I see that somebody's building a nest in there, I use peppermint spray. I buy raw, pure peppermint. I water it down like 20-1. I put it in a spray bottle, and I'll do it like 2 weeks in a row, 2 weekends in a row, and that's it. And I keep checking. Maybe a year later, I got to do it again, something like that. Okay, at the bottom here, just for fun, Teslas apparently are really delicious to rats. So, it's not a bad thing now. So there's this new technology developed in England by GridGuard. You can put electrified mat around the whole car. And again, like I said, that will just repel the rats and mice, doesn't bother anybody else. It's called GridGuard. I think it's in Santa Barbara. So you can do that, and it's for other cars too. Okay.
Here we go. Pesticides are hazardous to our health. I love this quote from Rachel Carson. How could intelligent beings seek to control a few unwanted species by a method that contaminates the entire environment and brings the threat of disease and death even to their own kind? Accordingly to the EPA, there are countless studies of pesticides have been linked to Alzheimer's disease, asthma, birth defects, cancers, breast cancers, leukemias, lymphomas, prostate cancer, developmental learning disabilities, autism, endocrine disruption, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, and reproductive health. Here I'd like to show you a quick video of this is a video of two University of California Irvine professors testifying at a city council meeting in 2016, where the city banned the use of chemical pesticides in favor of an organic path. This is a city with over 300,000 people, 22 community parks, and 40 neighborhood parks, and they got rid of their poisons.
Yeah, this is just very informative.
Scientific research on the effects of pesticide exposure during the in utero period or gestational period linked exposure to pesticides to later childhood cancers. Children are developing rapidly, and pesticides and other chemicals can interfere with that development. Chemicals that can get into the body can cross the blood-brain barrier, which is not completely protected, so it can get to the brain. The other fact is that children are more susceptible because they're actually exposed more. Children crawl around on the ground. They have more hand-to-mouth behaviors. So they're actually more exposed. They get more into the body. They're more susceptible. There's been a body of research. They've shown a whole range of outcomes. Some lower IQ among children who are exposed gestationally or shortly after birth, and behavioral development such as ADHD. And so they've shown associations with leukemia and with brain tumors with pesticide exposures in children. Pesticides are designed to kill. They have many different mechanisms of being toxic. While children, we've talked about, are more susceptible, adults are also going to be affected with exposure to the pesticides. With pets, in many ways, they also have behaviors like young children that can increase their exposure. The regulatory structure in the United States has a long, sad history. And so for many of the pesticides that are most commonly used out there, they had almost no testing. Pesticides shouldn't ever have been considered safe because the whole point of pesticides is to kill. So pesticides have always been selected because they were toxic. Also within the spectrum of pesticides, we've had histories where a pesticide like DDT was used extremely widely because it was considered essentially non-toxic. And as we know, it's been associated with cancer, devastating impacts on the environment. So we all love the environment of Irvine, but we want Irvine to be a truly safe and healthful city. And the important thing to understand is that there are options. It's not that you have to heavily use pesticides in order to maintain the postcard picture perfect Irvine that we know and take care of our environment.
One more short thing to do. The second professor now is going to talk.
Good evening, Mayor Choi and members of the council. My name is Bruce Blumberg. I'm a professor at UC Irvine. Slides will be up in a moment in the Department of Developmental Cell Biology. I received my PhD training at UCLA, and I was a postdoc at UCLA and at the Salk Institute. I want to talk to you briefly tonight about the science of endocrine disruption. You've heard about toxicity of pesticides, and in fact, they are toxic, but they're toxic, as Professor Baker said, in a variety of ways. One thing that we should be aware of is that all forms of non-communicable diseases are on the rise in recent years. You can highlight a few: leukemia, brain cancer, difficulty conceiving and maintaining pregnancy, autism, obesity. The main question is why. So I and many of my colleagues believe that endocrine disrupting chemicals, that is, chemicals that affect the function of the endocrine system, are at least partly responsible for this. And I provided the council members the recent World Health Organization, United Nations Environmental Program report on the state of science of endocrine disruptors. These chemicals are often persistent pollutants or dietary components that disrupt the normal functioning of our body. They increase the risk of many cancers. For example, a woman's risk of breast cancer is related to her total lifetime exposure to estrogens, including estrogenic chemicals in the environment. Leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and brain cancers have all been associated with endocrine disruptor exposure. There are quite a few endocrine disruptors. This is a partial list from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, and you may notice that there are several here that are of concern to the discussion that we're having: 2,4-D, atrazine, glyphosate, pyrethroids. These are all endocrine disrupting chemicals that are used routinely. Another important point is that whether we like it or not, we all carry a body burden of toxic chemicals. The Environmental Working Group tested 417 chemicals in the umbilical cord blood of pregnant women, and they found 287 different chemicals. Of those, 180 are known to cause cancer in animals or humans, 217 are neurotoxic, 208 are developmental toxins. An important question is, did any of these moms or children give informed consent for this exposure? Did they benefit from it in any way? Is this a good idea? Lastly, I'd like to address some myths and reality in endocrine disruptor science. The first myth is that the EPA, under the aegis of laws like FIFRA and TSCA, tests the effects of chemicals on humans and assures that they're safe. Sadly, the reality is EPA doesn't test chemicals, and they require that the testing is done by the manufacturers of those chemicals. EPA practices the precautionary principle, as they do in Europe, which is precautionary principles encoded into the law. In fact, the law in the US requires substantial certainty of harm to humans to be demonstrated before a chemical can be unlicensed. Another myth is that the EPA, the USDA, and various agencies measure the levels to which we're exposed and make sure that we're protected from toxic levels. The reality is that they don't do exposure assessment. These exposures are inferred from modeling, and they rarely, if ever, measure actual exposures. Lastly, it's a myth that EPA and other agencies use state-of-the-art modern science to evaluate chemical risk. The reality is that the science that they use, if you can call it that, is archaic, 50 years old plus, and is heavily influenced by the registrants of the chemicals. I'd like to sum up by saying that the data supporting adverse health consequences of pesticides are very strong. Even if you were to accept the possibility that there's controversy. When there's uncertainty, we have to decide which way should we err in making public policy. What will be the cost of waiting for evidence demonstrating substantial certainty of harm in humans before we act to restrict exposure? I personally think that we have enough evidence to act. Lastly, aren't our children, grandchildren, future generations the most important consideration? I and many of my colleagues have shown that chemical effects can be passed down across the generations, and that does not happen by mutations in DNA. That happens by another mechanism, which we could go into at great length another time. Lastly, sadly, this is what we're doing. We're conducting a very large-scale experiment. I like this slide quite a bit, and this is a federal regulator telling a child that we do test for the safety of pesticides in your food and environment. It's kind of a long-term test, which means we are the test subjects. And I don't think that's a very good idea. Thank you very much.
I believe this is going to change your life.
Okay, here we go. As we just heard, pesticides cause special problems for children. You can see that one slide there. That was the old Malibu where it was one of our local parks where you see a guy in a hazmat outfit on and a little child with her riding a bicycle. There was no notification. And that was one of the most harmful pesticides that the city was using at that time. Oops. So pesticides do cause special problems for children. According to the National Poison Center, over 6,000 children reported poisons. A child playing in the grassy area treated with pesticides have close contact with the earth. And as we have heard from the professors just now, pesticides are harmful to fetuses because the chemicals can pass from the mother during pregnancy or from the mother is nursing her child. Here, I'd like to speak a few moments about the Healthy School Act. This is a very important policy that happened in 2000. It initiated reform for the school districts. Previous to that, the law specifies that specifies use and reporting requirements. The school must create an IPM policy, post warning signs, keep records for 4 years, notify parents, train personnel how to use pesticides. Good idea. Specify what chemicals are using, and rodent poisons cannot be scattered. This was an important start because before this, nothing was done for the children. So what is integrated pest management? The intention of IPM that the school district insists on, it happened in the 1950s when scientists recognized the overuse and abuse of pesticides in food production. The purpose of this revolution was to decrease pesticide usage and explore alternative methods such as physical, cultural, and biological aids. There are many integrated pest management policies that do not include chemical pesticides. However, some chemical supporters advocate an IPM that does include chemical pesticides. So let's see what Palm Springs School District here recommends. This is a typical document that the schools have to fill out. And let's see how they do. At the bottom, it says, this is what IPM is about, managing pest control through monitoring and inspection using the most appropriate, least hazardous methods of control that minimizes exposure to students, staff, and public and the environment. Good start. This is the reality of what they're doing. Here's a list that hired pest control companies thought was safe to use around children. This toxic list contains substances such as 2,4-D, dicamba, and fuselage. These active ingredients were determined by the EPA to be possible carcinogens, neurotoxins, reproductive toxins, birth and developmental neurotoxins, causes kidney and liver damage, potential leachers to birds and aquatic organisms, and some have no antidote. These are just 3 of the many hazardous pesticides that are being used on school grounds just to control weeds. Also noted is Fast Track, based on bromethalin. This is a nerve toxin. It is the new replacement for the anticoagulant poisons that's already poisoning our wildlife and pets. This toxic chemical has no antidote. These are extremely dangerous pesticides that should never be used around children or the environment. The question is, why are they being used? There are strategies based on exclude, deter, and repel that will eliminate these toxic pesticides. This needs to be investigated by your school district. Here are examples of pesticide-free schools. If the same thing happened, if you became pesticide-free in Palm Springs here, the city can be the example to your school system. This is what happened with the schools around where I live. The first one noted is the Oak Park School District. I have a little story about that. I was invited to be part of their environmental fair. I set up my little booth, and the gentleman comes up to my booth, and he said, I still have my little bait box there, and I said, well, you're not using any of these bait boxes around your property, are you? And he says, well, I actually do use them. I have 125 of them. And I said, wow. I said, where do you use them? And he identifies himself. He was a superintendent of the Oak Park Unified School District. He said he was told by the pesticide company that these were safe poisons to be used around the schools. I said, take me to your bait box. He took me to the bait box, and it was filled with the second generation anticoagulants, which is one of the worst poisons that we have banned from the state of California. At that time, it wasn't quite banned. And he said he was told by the pesticide company that these were safe poisons. And they do that. They do that all the time. We hear the same excuse that this is a safe poison. There is no safe poison. So I asked him to go check with the National Park Service over there. We do talks with the National Park Service. He checked with the National Park Service. Indeed, everything I was telling him was truth. And in 2 weeks, all the poison bait boxes were gone, and they adopted a pesticide-free policy for the entire school district. Also, these other school districts that surround us, we moved forward to get them to go poison-free also. So you could use these as a good example to your local city to move forward with a pesticide-free policy. Question to ask schools: what are they using? What does their IPM policy look like? There are non-toxic community organizations that can help you move you along the way. One of them is Rewild Your Campus, and the other one is Non-Toxic Communities. These are both very good organizations. Here's another great list of references I put together. Please note the last two that you have there. If you're curious about the pesticides that are being used, this is a wonderful gateway that Beyond Pesticides has created. You can put the name of the pesticide in there, and they will come up with all the research papers concerning that pesticide. If you don't see that pesticide in that list, you have to look up the chemical composition. And that's when you look at the last one. It says MSDS. It's called Material Safety Data Sheet. You pull that one up on the chemical that you're interested in, and then go back to the gateway, and then you'll see the poisonous problems that pesticide is giving. This is the good news. Cities can control their own pesticides, just like we did in Malibu. And Ojai passed recently a earth-friendly management policy. We've been pesticide-free since 2016. We established the earth-friendly management policy banning all chemical pesticides. There are no bait boxes on city property, and we established the dumpster litter ordinance, which is absolutely critical. The city revolves around a step-up approach to repel, exclude, and deter. As I mentioned before, Ojai also just recently passed their policy. Earth-friendly management, that is the brief summary. The best management practices revolve around sanitation, teaching, environmental enrichment, preventative actions, and of course the universal policy of the precautionary principle. Pesticides contaminate our food. Even after peeling and washing, about 60% of our produce still contains more than one pesticide. Pesticides are stored in our fatty tissue and slowly poison our body. A non-organic apple can contain over 47 different pesticides. PAM is a great organization here that specializes in food and poisons in food. So please take a look at their website. It's an excellent website for food contamination. Pesticides also contaminate our soil and water. Soil, which is the most complex system on Earth, just a handful of soil has 10 to 100 million organisms. It's not just dirt. This is living creatures underneath us that is nourishing our ecosystem. 90% of our nation's streams are contaminated with pesticides. Pesticides leach into our water supply through soil erosion and agricultural runoff and can be particularly toxic to fish and other mammals. Here's an example of our soil food web with all the little creatures that are underneath our feet. These are two examples of destruction of herbicides that recently happened in our area. One was in Potrero Canyon Park, and all the plantings that they've done there was destroyed by a chemical called Chigapro, which is another herbicide. And the other great tragedy was over 400 ancient trees, oak trees, and other trees in Ojai Park, was turned into a graveyard for the misuse of Polaris, another herbicide trying to get rid of weeds. There is alternatives. Here we are, earth-friendly weed control. We got a hot water steam machine, which is this amazing little product. You can buy them in little backpacks, or they have big machines for larger areas. You could do weed whacking, burning. I don't know if I recommend that at this point. Solarization, hand weeding, heavy mulching, and goats. We have a goat run every year in Malibu. The kids love it. We have hundreds of goats running up and down the street and into our hillside. It makes a great event for adults also. And only after these have been exhausted should one even consider an organic pesticide. Pesticides are harming farming communities. The EPA estimated thousands of pesticide-related illnesses occur among our farm workers every year. Trouble is brewing more than we think. Chemical companies like Bayer, Monsanto, Dow, Syngenta, and others have expanded their agricultural markets where they're poisoning our food and targeting invasive and non-invasive species in nature preserves with toxic pesticides. There's a chart of how they're expanding. Pesticides are dangerous to pets.
I'm the rodent poison expert here. So back to the rat poisons. Pets are a big victim. I mean, we're mainly focused on the wildlife, but thousands of pets, especially dogs, and they're just this stuff tastes good. I mean, rodenticides taste good. That's on purpose. And therefore, dogs go after them and they don't stop. And there's over 6,000 calls in this particular data we had in 2009. And, anytime we go to an event like this or Earth Day Fair or Forum, we constantly are approached by people telling us horror stories of what happened to their dog. And it's not necessarily in their yard. It's because they're walking the dog and some neighbor had some stuff or the dog got loose. I mean, it's just really, really bad. And then, as Ken said, the dogs are exposed to herbicides also because they are low to the ground. Okay, now here's a little detail about wildlife. Here's what happens. Okay, that green box, that's the problem right there. The green box is a poison bait box. That's the source. That has poison in it. We hear all the time, and so many people believe that the poison is in the box. The rats and mice go in there, they die, and every month the pest control company comes and dumps out the bodies. And that's completely and totally does not happen. That's absolutely false. What happens is the mice and rats go in, they get poisoned, they just get out, and they are in bad shape. And they're like really easy to catch. They're preferentially caught by predators up the food chain because they're in such bad shape. So they get eaten by foxes, raccoons, coyotes, bobcats, raptors. Owls and hawks are big victims. And then at the next level, the mountain lions eat. They don't eat. I don't think they eat mice and rats directly. They eat the coyotes and raccoons are examples we know about, and they get poisoned. And that's bad. That happens all the time. Here's a bigger picture of. Here are samples of poison bait boxes. This is to pollute your brain because now you're going to see them everywhere. Okay, behind the shopping centers, near the dumpsters that are feeding the rodents. Then they put the poison right all over the place, so that to counter the open dumpsters. This is like the way if you wanted to destroy wildlife. This is like fantastic. I mean, breed them like crazy, poison them, and send them out. That'll eliminate wildlife really well. And in homeowners associations, dozens and hundreds of these things in the landscaping next to buildings, hidden a little bit, but not that much. You'll see them. Okay, and also in individual homes. That's where the pest control companies put them. They all have, you see at the upper left, they all have labels. That's a law. You got to have a label. They have a whole list of ingredients. The one inside is checked off. If you want to know about what's in there, take a really nice photo and email us, and we'll try to tell you what that is. So this is the challenge, these bait boxes. We want to get rid of these. Here's some of the statistics that from National Park Service, UCLA, especially in our area, Department of Fish and Wildlife. The basic answer is that the predators are poisoned to the level of 90%. 80 to 90% of predators have some level of poison. Owls and hawks, these are various studies, 90% in San Diego, 80% somewhere else. There's a big bobcat study, like 350 bobcats, Southern California, 5 counties. 92% had exposure to rodenticides. Many areas that had had bobcats were wiped out of bobcats. The Canal Valley, that's Thousand Oaks and Ogura. Coyotes, big victims, and then mountain lions. I mean, it's painful when a mountain lion gets poisoned. Here's a big study all over California, 252 tested in 37 counties, 96%. The way they see this is either they do blood testing, or if it's like a roadkill, then they'll test the liver. And then that's how they figure out how many are poisoned. Here's a quote from the Santa Monica Mountains. 31 out of 32 mountain lions tested positive for exposure to poison. 7 died at least. I mean, that's really an underestimate. And then all these other animals, any kind of predator, are poisoned. Okay, Keon mentioned, I mean, we really promote cities to deal with it. They can regulate, anybody can regulate their own use of pesticides in cities, on its parks, its properties, its buildings, but they cannot tell other people, other entities what to do. And the reason is it was legal for a city to regulate pesticides in the 1980s and counties. And Mendocino County didn't like their children being sprayed. So they passed a law saying you can't spray our children with herbicides. And it was totally legal. So what happened is the pesticide industry went to the state legislature and bought a special law just for themselves. This is like the late 80s, early 90s, saying that only the state can regulate pesticides, cities and counties cannot. That's the dilemma we're now in because of that. Since 2014, us and a coalition of like-minded organizations fought at the state level for state legislation to against the most common rodenticide, which is called second-generation anticoagulant. Just anticoagulants. And from 2014 to just last September, we finally basically succeeded in banning most use of this most prevalent rodent poison. Not totally, but most of it. So that's what it took. But unfortunately, there's plenty of others since then. And the Keon mentioned bromethalin. The two, if you go to the hardware store and you look at the label and look at the fine print, you'll see bromethalin and cholecalciferol. These are the two new ones that are greatly expanded and now are causing tremendous damage. In fact, in some ways they're worse than the anticoagulants. Bromethalin, here, the pictures on the left are 2 orphans, 2 mountain lion kittens who were orphaned because their mother died of a combination of rodent poisons, including bromethalin. It's really bad. Bromethalin, the second line paragraph, bromethalin was detected in 10 out of 16 mountain lions in the Santa Monica Mountains. People hadn't studied bromethalin so much because the anticoagulants were so dominant. And now we're finding the true nature of bromethalin. The EPA required label is extremely toxic to mammals and dogs, birds, dogs and cats, etc. What's really bad about this stuff is it's an awful way it's an unbelievable bad way to die, and there's no antidote. There's nothing you could do. With anticoagulants, it didn't work that well either, but you could try. There was something you could do. There was an antidote that sometimes worked. Bromethalin's really bad. The other one I mentioned, cholecalciferol, has this wonderful name, vitamin D3. Turns out vitamin D3 in high quantities is really terrible. We're hearing about this from veterinarians now. Because of the expanded use of it, pets are big victims, dogs especially. Here's a quote from a board certified, one of the experts in the field, Justine Lee. As an emergency critical care veterinary specialist, this is my most hated type of poisoning. Only a small amount can result in severe poisoning in both dogs and cats, and there's virtually nothing you can do about it. Now, glue traps are not poison, but please do not consider them. They are indiscriminate in what they catch, and very, very awful way to die. To even for you wouldn't even want to do this to a rat. Okay, so please do not use glue traps. I haven't really talked about insects, but insects are extremely important. They're a sign of the sixth mass species extinction in the history of the billions of years of life on the planet. Bugs are not as dramatic, except for monarch butterflies. Everybody loves monarch butterflies, but in general, and bees. But in general, they're incredibly important and not as advertised. Some study has shown 75% a decrease in insect abundance in recent decades. The monarch butterfly population is absolutely, I mean, we used to see them, they're like ants. We used to see them all over in Malibu. Now zero. I mean, like, I think I did see one like some months ago and it's shocked. Like, oh wow, a monarch butterfly. So things are happening. Everything's based on insects, the whole food chain. Food supply, about the pollinators, of course, and birds live on insects, but the whole food chain is based on insects.
Okay. Pesticides health and safety testing is conducted by the chemical companies. There's no other explanation for this. That is exactly what's happening here, and our children are not a science experiment. Thank you. Synthetic pesticides have so many secrets. Where are they being used? When? How much? What is in them? Many ingredients are treated as trade secrets information. You have heard of the word proprietary ingredients? They're secret ingredients. Multiple pesticides can synergize together to be more dangerous in potency. Inert ingredients may be as or more toxic than the active ingredient itself, and it can take decades to biodegrade. So if you must use the pesticides, and only under emergencies, because repel, exclude, deter should qualify any problem you have, use the organics. And why? The organic products that we recommend are the EPA eco-exempt list. You got an OMRI list, you've got National Organic list. There's plenty of choices to be made. They require transparency and listing of all the ingredients on the label so we know what's going on. And these products go through a huge examination before they will be accepted. So here we'd just like to show you the Los Angeles County gave us a grant supporting our efforts to protect wildlife from poisons with these billboards that we've been placing all over Los Angeles. In conclusion, environmental chemicals do cross borders through the soil, food, wind, water, and even through our skin. Reduce harm, poisons cause inhumane death and pose significant risks to people, pets, and wildlife. They disrupt vital ecosystems functioning by degrading habitats, disturbing food webs, and killing soil organisms. So use preventative measures that make poisons unnecessary, eliminate the cost of perpetual reliance on them. Thank you very much. And we're here for any questions that you might have.
Let's start off, say, what should we do? How are you successful and what are the first steps? What are the very beginning process?
I think the first steps is to talk to you.
And can you just repeat each of the questions? When they're not into the microphone, right?
Okay. So the question is, what do we do for the first steps on how to move forward? I would suggest talking to your city to be the example that your schools can follow and that your citizens can follow. If your city can go poison-free and eliminate these toxic pesticides, why can't your school system do the same? And why can't your citizens do the same? And your HOAs, etc. So this is how we started. We started with our city, and we moved forward with our school districts that were just as poisonous as your school district. And they've eliminated their pesticides and went poison free. So I think you need an example to move forward. And I think it's really important your city recognizes what's going on. I'd like to see something on your city website that says what pesticides the city is using. I could find what the school system is using, but there's nothing I could find about what your city is using, and that should be transparent to all of your citizens. Yes.
I'm going to bring you a microphone.
Sure.
There you come.
So I want to make sure I understand, only the state can regulate pesticides. So if we go to the city, are we just asking them to pass a resolution? But they can't enforce it and they have to maybe convince the school district that can regulate what happens on their property or the HOA that happens on their property, but the city actually cannot regulate.
On its own property.
On its own property, it can. So that's why, yes, on its own property it can. So the city can create a resolution or a policy that bans the use of these chemical pesticides and looks towards an organic approach. That is possible, and then they will be the example to your school district that's heavily using pesticides with your children. It's horrible what they're doing.
We've got one way back here.
Hi, we have an association with 102 units, and we had a real rat problem last year. So we had traps put around, and we found rats that had just melted in the pavement. I guess they had, I don't know if there was coagulants in the rat poison or what it was. And also my dog almost died. And it cost me a lot of money to save them. And I'm pretty confident. I'm president of the association. I would love to find another way of dealing, and we're on the Wash, we're at Cody Place. I would love to find another way to deal with the rat issue. And who can we go to? Is there some pest control company that uses natural, or is there some sort of control? I know you laugh, but is there anything? Seriously.
HOA, yeah, I mean, HOAs are, we deal with a lot of HOAs, and it's wonderful to hear your enthusiasm about this. What we do is, we can explain, I'd rather not answer your question in detail right away, because I'd like to what we like to do is set up a Zoom talk with your board or your membership or whatever, and we would like to talk, and we have the National Park Service representative who specializes in talking to HOAs, going through all the kind of questions that you have. But basically, it sounds to me like there's a reason for what's happening. I mean, sure, but let's. I'm encouraging you to please approach us and let's set up a 1 hour Zoom talk with us and the National Park Service.
Yeah, but basically we did review everything that needs to be done. We work with many of these HOAs. And so it's important to find an exclusion company, that not a pesticide company, even though pesticide companies do exclusion, but they will recommend using these magic boxes around the area to protect you. Okay, so listening to them will never resolve the issue. Okay, the issue revolves around exactly what we talked about, containing your trash. I don't know how you contain your trash. There's various methods. Some have open dumpsters, some have individual trash containers. So I'm not too sure what you have there, but I've been to many HOAs where they ask me how to get rid of these, rats and mice and raccoons and coyotes are coming through. And I always ask them, take me to your dumpster area. Okay, and what I have found in every single HOA that I've worked with is that they have open dumpsters. Okay, they have open dumpsters. They have lids that aren't closing correctly. Open dumpsters. And I say to this girl, I say, where are the lids to the dumpsters at this one particular HOA? And they said, we order them that way because it's easier to throw in the trash. But you just tell us how to get rid of the rats and mice. So things are really clear sometimes. And if you seal up your buildings, there's no reason to have any type of bait box, snap trap. You get into this kill mode, you're just going to keep killing them because they put in an attractant inside of the box. If you want to use a snap trap, you're just going to kill it. You just want to keep killing animals. You're attracting them to your property. That's not what a bait box. You want to repel them from your property. So I would suggest looking at your property, looking at your trash situation. Make sure your buildings are sealed so you don't have complaints. about these issues. Rats and mice, they're part of the ecosystem, and it's important that they're there. But you don't want them in your building or in your structure. So you've got to look at it from that point of view. You can use repellents, as we mentioned. You can encourage people to use peppermint, lavender, various types of flowers. You could change your landscape a bit. You could definitely, we do have there's one product that if you want to use, it's called Propel. It's on our website that can be sprayed around your buildings. And that is, again, a repellent. And you have to check out why they're being attracted in any way. If you see a mouse outside, a rat, that's okay. They live outside. You don't want them inside of your home.
I thought you could hold this up.
And so what was really interesting is that through the years, I've been talking about repellents, and all of a sudden I go into my Home Depot center, even Tomcat went to repellents, okay? And when they go, that, this is where people are going. So I have seen a shift happening, and one of the major ingredients, again, is peppermint. Peppermint.
It's just nature, right? We don't need the synthetics.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll come back. I know you've got a question in the back, but I thought there's, okay, go to the front.
I think it's absolutely great to take this into our own hands in our own yard and our own HOA at school. But I think at the same time, we need to work at a national level. Some nations ban a lot of these things, whether it's Roundup. A lot of these different pesticides, herbicides are banned in other countries. But in this country, what you see going on is Bayer, Monsanto, whatever. They are paying congressmen to take care of them and not let these things be banned. So we're naive if we think it's just a local problem. It's at a national level. The industry is making big money off of this, and they are paying off people in our government. So we're being naive if we don't act.
Thank you.
That's for sure.
That's for sure.
I'm going to make my way around over here.
Thank you. Judy Deertrack. I live here in Palm Springs, and I am an urban planner. And one thing I'm very aware of, even though the state can regulate and does not allow cities and counties to ban, a lot of times cities and counties work through incentives. And so they have a lot of power, even if they can't ban. There are other types of options that should be explored. And others are that they do a lot of landscape regulation. Again, even though they can't ban, they can reach agreements. They also do a lot of open space regulation with specific plans, the big projects. A lot of times they're negotiated. So they're not using regulatory power to ban chemicals, but these are excellent interface areas.
Excellent. Thank you for reminding us of that.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you for your work. What do you do in your community to reduce dumping, and how do you work with city and county to remove trash? And I'm sure that's where a lot of rats end up.
Yeah, the basic problem is I saw it. Some boots on the ground girl. I took out my car and sat in back of shopping malls and saw what looked to see what was going on. And basically what was going on is, number one, the businesses were overstuffing because they don't want to bring in another dumpster that would cost them money. So you see the businesses themselves were overflowing, as you saw in one of the pictures there. And then what was happening is that we have illegal dumping. So we have cars pulling up and dumping into the dumpsters that belong to the shopping malls, etc. Then we have little trucks pulling up, and they take away some of the things that are inside of there. And then we recently, in the past few years, couple of years actually, not much more, we have had a lot of problems with issues with homeless that has hit Malibu. And when they hit our dumpsters, they don't put things back. They just rummage through and throw everything around and just take whatever they want, walk away with it. So this is, and then you look at the dumpster situations themselves, is that it took 2 years and multiple meetings with our city government to meet with these two companies, Waste Management and Universal, to actually give us functioning dumpsters, functioning lids that weren't warped like this. We want lids. We got, I go to shopping, there's no lids on these shopping and some of them. Or the lids are pushed against the wall where they can't be closed. Or when they are up, the lids will be like this. And you'll always find right next to them, these poison big boxes, huge amounts of poison big boxes. So, again, if you're not, you got to stop feeding. Stop feeding, stop breeding, and there goes your rodent problem.
Your ordinance for rat-proof or rodent-proof dumpsters, what are the consequences if someone doesn't meet those requirements?
Well, good question, because, we want to have a bigger fine system. We have, our fine system is too low, I feel, because the majority of our commercial businesses has complied. However, I got one shopping mall that's a little bit slower than others. Okay, so it's important to follow up with this ordinance with a more substantial fine. Ours is like $100 first fine. The second time it goes up to $200. The third time it goes up to $500 for each time. So we're talking about these companies that have a lot of money, and $100 is not much of a fine. So again, it's important to follow up with substantial fines if you do commit to a dumpster lid lock ordinance. Other cities have, like Calabasas has recently moved forward with a lid lock ordinance also, because this is a major problem in every city that I've been to.
And you also have to push the city to take care of it. You tell them, hey, these guys are making a mess. You tell the city enforcement officer or your city councilman, you got to push.
We have a question back here.
Greater Palm Springs is an urban area, complex urban area, sprawling. Residential, commercial, golf courses, as you know, because it is Coachella Valley, but also further down Coachella Valley, Imperial Valley, hugely agricultural, with enormous use of herbicides, pesticides that are also, by the way, poisoning the salton sea. So how do you get the strategy about REE out to the agricultural interests?
This is a toughie one. Well, all we can do is promote the farmers to embrace an organic land management policy. And we do see this flip over is happening. Organic farming is a multi-billion-dollar industry now. It was a infant industry many years ago when I started, and I realized the nature of what needed to be done. And since then, it's a multi-billion-dollar business across the United States. It's organic, and when we use organic products, we don't poison our food, and we don't poison us and the environment too. Let's not forget about the environment. So the situation is just plainly is that the more people that can move over to an organic way of living, an organic way of seeing the world, the better off we'll all be. And it is difficult when you have the agricultural industry is big and big on pesticides, and but we're fighting back, and we know we've got a good path and a healthy path, and many people are supporting us from coast to coast, including the organic movement.
Tell them about the political problems we had with agriculture, the bills.
Yeah.
When we, like I said, we were eventually successful over a 10-year period to get the anticoagulants restricted. I would love to say totally banned in the state of California, but the power of Big Ag is such that they have all kinds of exemptions, and you nailed it. Agriculture is a big problem.
We were told when we tried to move forward state legislation right away. So I wanted to ban it through all of of California. They says you have to excuse agriculture or they will kill your bill. Period. That was from our senator told me that.
We have a question back here.
Hi, my name is Nava with Save Joshua Tree Wildlife.
Nava, welcome.
I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful wealth of information with us. In Joshua Tree, there's an increase in development with Airbnbs and VRBOs. There are so many that are using poison on the natural wildlife terrain by the national park entrance. I've spoken to many short-term rental hosts in regards to trying to bring to light, what is occurring with the dismantling of nature's food chain out there. I've come across many who don't care. And what their feedback is, I have a very successful vacation rental. That's what matters to them. Do you have any suggestions on how to get through that wall? Because it's very you can't talk to that person because they're not willing. And using also because of the terrain in Joshua Tree by the park, using you mentioned peppermint and so forth, the alternatives. Will that affect the insects around there that are circumventing the houses, the lizards, and so forth? They're naturally taking care of a lot of I know that the lizards are taking care of the insects. Does that affect them as well in regards to lizards and snakes and so forth?
Well, you can't please all the people all the time, but you sure can try, and that's what we do. We try, and I think if you could come out with some clear facts like it's in our pamphlet there, leave a pamphlet for them to look at. Also, what has been very successful in our campaign is yard signs. So I highly suggest, you have a pamphlet here. We have a talk. And but what has been very successful is giving out yard signs, and the yard signs stay, and the neighbors say, "Gee, what is that? What is this all about?" So I highly suggest using this as an aid into sharing the issue of poisoning As I said, you can't please everyone, but you can at least educate them, and that's what we do. We try to educate them and let them. They have to make the final choice there, but I think that's the way to go. I mean, I don't see anything else.
Are they using pest control companies now? Is that what they're doing?
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, they're using pest control companies, and what I'm finding is that a lot of the companies are not using labeling and they're not grounding the boxes. So I've been working with the county and reporting various properties that are in violation of using poison. So we have had a few boxes removed from that area. However, the ones I also, when you showed the Western exterminator, they're using actually banned poisons.
Well, that's easy. I mean, we have our experience with the entity that enforces that, which is our county agricultural commissioner. We've had tremendous responsiveness from them.
They're wonderful, actually.
But I didn't finish.
Oh, go ahead. So sorry.
This is good. I mean, the fact that they're using pest control companies is good because they're wasting money. The way to deal with these people is say, hey, you don't understand. There's an easier and cheaper. It's got to be cheaper, of course. and then give them some of the information. You must seal your building. So that's the argument. It's cheaper.
Okay.
It's not any cheaper. Again, you say there's no label by law. There has to be a label on all bait boxes, or it's illegal. one and a check mark has to be checked off. So you have to let the consumer know what poison is in that box. So if you see a big box with no labels, you report
Oh,
that.
no, that's illegal.
That's totally illegal.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to go 1, 2, 3.
In terms of food sources, and this is something that affects all of us here in the desert. I live in an HOA. We have a number of citrus trees, and a very small percentage of that fruit is eaten and it falls, and it's an attractant for
That's right.
fruit rats at work. So you could make a change working with your HOA to start looking at your landscaping and
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the major problems with mice and rats is fruit trees, etc. There are, as I said, there's depending on the size of the tree, there are baffles, there are squirrel baffles you can put on. Make sure they're high enough because they can jump. Okay. We used to live in Hawaii, and what they did in Hawaii to keep the rats off the palm trees is they made metal cuffs about 6 feet off the ground up on the about the cuffs are about a foot wide, about 6 feet up, so they can crawl up so far and they slip down. Okay. Some people have issues where they just jump from tree to tree, and we did find a product that has chew-proof chew-proof netting. So they can't get into, if they're smaller trees, you could actually net the trees. That's a lot of the professionals do the netting. But this is really important that you pick up the fruit. You pick up the food source because this is a food source. You're feeding and breeding. So you have to keep your place tidy. And that's a very important thing that you should bring up with your HOA, that they have to be more tidy.
Yeah, you explained the threat of pesticides and landscaping to children, and you explained the threat of the bait boxes to the wildlife chain. Is there a threat from the bait boxes also to children?
Well, of course,
And how does that work? Can you explain how that works? Yeah.
I found it stunning when I first started, when I went into the school system where I live. I'm talking specifically now about the next school system, the West Virginia school system. And I was called in there, and one of the biology teachers there said, "We've got these bait boxes all over our school. Could you come in and tell us about what's going on there?" And so I go on campus, and indeed there were bait boxes everywhere, and especially they were glued to the students' lockers. Believe it or not. And this is a high school, and I don't know about you, but I'm a curious person. Just give me a little screwdriver. I want to see what's in that box, And I can't believe that these poisons were allowed to be around children. There's absolutely no excuse to have these around children or the environment, but especially in the school system. This is atrocious.
Okay, you mentioned the importance of eating organic, but it's also important that we make people aware that organic has become greenwashing. It's used as a marketing thing. So the only way you know if what you're eating is truly organic is if it has the USDA organic seal on it, which is a round circle. It's green and white. It says USDA organic. And they every year they analyze all the fruits and vegetables and put out a list that says clean 15, which are the cleanest ones, and dirty doesn't. And you need to go by that, not by something that just says organic, because that's become marketing. It's not to be believed. It's a marketing technique.
The best thing is to grow your own.
Yeah.
If everybody had a little backyard, as my mom did, and I got a taste of real organic. Everybody's got to have a little yard to really appreciate how hard it is to grow. Grow vegetables and fruits, and the care that's needed. We really have to appreciate our farmers and all the work that they do to give us the food that they do. They do a tremendous job.
Over here, Linda?
I just wanted to tell everyone that as part of the Desert Wildlife Center, as part of our poison-free campaign, we are looking to bring in a humane pest control company here, someone to do those kinds of things, because there isn't anybody here to do these kinds of repel, exclude, and deter. So anyway, stay tuned. We are looking to do that, and I know I've had a lot of questions looking for someone to do those kinds of things. So
I would like to make a comment there because we had the same problem in Malibu when we first started. Because I was looking for a pesticide company that that could offer repellents and be truthful about what's happening. I couldn't find anybody in Northern California though. I researched everywhere. Northern California had plenty of them for some reason. Yeah, they got plenty of those nice organic people up there, and no poisons and such. And yeah, I could find them up there. I couldn't find anyone where we lived. Then finally, they started flipping over. I'm telling you, they started flipping. If you look on my website, you'll see at least 5 of them now. I couldn't find anyone in the beginning, and they're flipping over. We've got major companies that are flipping over. Okay, so it is happening. It is happening.
This is
And
a-
flip over.
Yeah, so this is a great entrepreneurial opportunity because there is a gap. Linda and I looked all over, and the people that we have talked to, they really push the pesticides and the killing. And we're like, no, that's not what we want. It's very, very difficult. So we can take one. Is there one more question? Okay, we got all the questions. And I do want to do a plug for your awesome coloring book. I want to color in here. But we have a ton in the back. Thank you for bringing them. And these are great for your grandkids, your kids, or for yourself, because it's very just, cool to be in the flow of coloring. And I think we have a couple of announcements, right, David? That we want to
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you.
All right, thank you so much. Again, my name is David Paisley, the Community Engagement Director at Oswit Land Trust. I just want to say thank you to a lot of familiar faces. Palm Springs Sustainable and Wild is our sort of in-season educational program that's sponsored by the City of Palm Springs. So thank you to the City of Palm Springs for sponsoring this. We did over 30 events this year. We had about 1,800 participants. So that's great. This is our last talk, but we do have one more event, which is our Saving Nature Film Festival, which will be at the Palm Springs Cultural Center. That will be on May 1st. There's some flyers back there, but you'll all be getting some emails from me about that as time goes. But please buy tickets. 100% of your donation for the tickets will support Oswit Land Trust. But there's other film festivals too.
And I will be there at the Saving Nature Film Festival. I'm really excited about that. The film festival that the Desert Wildlife Center is having in partnership with the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory is April the 11th from 7 to 9:30 p.m. That is free and open to the public. And it was really fun. Linda and I and a few others screened the films for Wild and Scenic. They're all short films, as I said, and they're all about wildlife. So if you love wildlife, please be there. And I also want to do a plug from our friends over at College of the Desert. There's a documentary film happening this Friday at 4. It's called Hawk Watch, and parking is free, admission is free, although they suggest a $10 donation. Doors open at 3, and the film shows at 3:30. I don't know what this means. With show at 3:30, 45 minutes, and a Q&A afterwards. So it's April 4th. All right, and this is the film stars Hal Cohen. He will be there in person. The Hawk Watch guy at Borrego Springs. Every March, he coordinates a Swanson's Hawk Watch with volunteers who count them every day in the morning and the evening for 6 weeks. And it took about 3 years to make the film. Was anybody part of the Hawk Watch that's here in the room? Well, this sounds fascinating. So I hope to see you there at 3:30 at College of the Desert too. Thank you everyone for coming. Visit the tables in the back.
And last announcement, there's a few Oswit Land Trust volunteers. We have to turn in the room. There's another group coming at 6, and we need to put some chairs away. So help out.